Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. Austria in the 18th century, forests surround village. Killing a baby gets a woman sentenced to death. Agnes readies for marriage life with her beloved, but her mind and her heart grow heavy. A gloomy path, alone, evil thoughts arising. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for The Devil's Bath. 2024 shaping up to be one heck of a year when it comes to one particular topic. And if you have seen The Devil's Bath, The Coffee Table, and Immaculate, you may know what we're talking about. Yes, we are here reviewing the latest flick to hit Shudder, which, as stated before, The Devil's Bath. Didn't know anything about this. Only thing that I knew, and it was shortly after we had obtained the screener, was that this was from the director of Goodnight Mommy and The Lodge, which Goodnight Mommy I thought was decent. It didn't blow me away like it seemed to for a lot of other folks, and The Lodge wasn't that big of a fan of. And I know, Luke, you have not seen either of those films, so this is completely fresh, new experience, and like most of our screeners, you probably didn't know very much about The Devil's Bath. So I'm gonna let you inform me. How much did you know about this film before we sat down to watch it?
Less than zero. No, I had no reference point, have not seen Goodnight Mommy or The Lodge, so I knew that our directors had directed those films, but again, no reference point because I hadn't seen them, so I didn't really know what to expect. And yes, you're correct, I didn't do any due diligence, so I went into this one very cold, and just knew, 18th century Austria was to the extent of what I went into here expecting. So didn't know what kind of themes we were going to tackle, what we were in for. I knew it was a smaller film going to be appear on Shudder. So, with those, it's a toss-up. Whether cinematically you're going to get something very beautiful, depending on if they, were able to work within their means, or if it was just going to be kind of maybe a dud, But this being a foreign film, my expectations were a little heightened, and probably found myself a little more excited as, the track record for our foreign film coverage seems to be pretty positive overall. So going into this one, I gotta say, spoiler for the end of this does maintain that streak of positivity when it comes to foreign films, because I gotta say this one really did it for me. It's very cerebral, very different, and cinematically beautiful. Those are just kind of the general thoughts right off the bat here, but I gotta say this one was a big positive for me.
Yeah, The Devil's Bath is definitely one that I also did not do my due diligence on. Like I said, other than knowing those filmmakers, I didn't know much about the story. I had seen a list of like upcoming summer horror films, and this was on there. And I said, you know what? It's Shudder. We have a great working relationship with them. We're going to take it anyway. I got to agree with you. This was certainly visually a breathtaking film, and just content wise very unique, but extremely depressing. This is not a film for the faint of heart, and I only say that because if you've ever been somebody who has suffered from depression, I am somebody who suffers from depression. I can be very open about that. I don't mind telling people that I do take an antidepressant. The film captures that mental illness so hauntingly accurately that it is, and of course it's in an 18th century perspective, so it's a little bit more intense. There's a little bit more going on there, but it has moments in here that are truly, wow, that hurts to watch. That hurts to experience, to just know even just the slightest bit of how this person is feeling. It is very haunting.
Yes, absolutely. And the human psyche is always something that has intrigued me. Psychological aspects in film are something that I gravitate toward. Psychological horror is one of my absolute favorites when it's well done, because there are so many different elements, and human beings in general just different creatures in terms of how they approach particular issues, and just the weight of certain things, as they carry them on throughout the day, and looking at this film through an 18th century kind of lens, it's interesting because, mental illness is not something that is unfamiliar to a lot of people. I think nowadays, in more modern times, it's a bigger talking point than it has been over the past decade, to be honest. It's something that is still new, something that I think people are still feeling out and trying to navigate those waters. But the truth be told is it's very hard to navigate those waters. You have your good days and you have your bad days. You have your great moments and you have your very bad moments, and they could all intertwine from one minute to the next. And I think, looking at the Devil's Bath through an 18th century lens like that, it's rather intriguing because we don't have things like they didn't have things like antidepressants or something to pass the time whether you're watching a film. This is a film where you're stuck in the monotony of the day to day and your expectations of your family roles, or in terms of if you're a wife, of what's to be expected to you, or if you're a husband, what's going to be expected of you, and how you just get through the day battling mental illness. And I think the ground that they cover here is rather interesting because, again, it does feel monotonous. It feels mundane, but that was the lifestyle back then. And, it's something where, what if you don't have anything to look forward to, and how do you deal with that? And being a foreign subject to a lot of people, certainly back then, and how do you deal with that? Because you're looked at as almost off, as what's wrong with you? And I absolutely love that they tackle these elements here through this lens because it is so unique. It's something different. To my knowledge, it's nothing that we've gotten before. Certainly, I've never seen. And so, seeing something like this, while somber, was rather refreshing because of the elements they do intertwine in here, and what they do tackle, as Dylan hinted to at the very beginning of this, where it can be a tough watch. It can be a triggering watch. But I think, you see that Tommy Lee Jones little gif out there where it's like, if you're strong enough, it's worth it, and I think that Devil's Bath really fits that bill, where it's a tough watch, but I think at the end of the day, it's really worth it.
Yeah, this is one that I'm not going to be able to recommend to everybody because it is something that, like Luke said, it really goes to some dark places, and it does really crack open the human psyche and mental illness and just what it's like to struggle with that. And yeah, it's tough to sit there with these characters and experience. And I think that although I appreciate some of that, there are moments in this, if I had to give this any criticism, where I feel like we get the point and they tend to still run it and harp on us. And I get that's the intention, but it does make this film drag a little bit in a few spots for me. I would say that it starts off very strong, very shocking, and it ends very strong and very shocking. And everything in between is, it can be a bit of a grind at times. But I do think that it is important to serve the message of the film and what they're trying to say and what they're trying to get across. And I think ultimately the reason I give this film so much praise and props is not just for how beautiful it is, because this is a very expertly shot film. We were just comparing it to things like The Witch, where it captures that 18th century tone and vibe and atmosphere very well. But I think overall this is something that I just feel like we've never seen, and I know there's films that have done it, but from a horror perspective, where you kind of go into this and you're expecting, I was expecting a supernatural force or something of that nature. When you hear the title, The Devil's Bath, you expect something like that. But for it to land where it lands and the story that it tells, and then finding out at the end in the credits more about said story, it almost became more scary to me as I sat there and really thought about the implications of the material and the subject matter, and just the lengths that of how deep we can get as humans when we've been consumed by this this unfortunate bout of depression.
And that was an element that I rather enjoyed in this, where you almost feel like they're, with the tension that they bring with this world building and this kind of confined tale, you almost have this element of you're expecting something supernatural, whether that be a possession or witchcraft or something like that. And I think, you know, back in those times when you're off, as they say, I think that's kind of what they point to, where it has to be explained. It has to be something tangible. You're either practicing witchcraft or you're being possessed by a demon, you know, because nothing else makes sense. And I absolutely love that they decided to tell this tale during that time, because it's so prevalent in terms of even today in modern times, where if someone doesn't understand mental illness because it's not tangible, it's not something that you can see, you know, and looking at it, I think it was even more evident back then to be like, well, if you're off, you're clearly doing something. Are you practicing black magic or whatever, you know? And I think that's a rather interesting element that they do breathe into the Devil's Bath. And, you know, as you talked about, you know, it's a slow burn where it's like, yes, there is a very jarring beginning and then a very thought-provoking ending to this. So, you know, when you look at that middle portion where we're being tied down to the monotony of the day to day, I can see this being a little bit of a long watch for someone who is not prepared, maybe for the messaging that they're going to be told throughout here and are kind of waiting for something to happen. But really what kept me intrigued during those moments is the beautiful visuals in this. There is a stockpile of just so many great cinematic ventures, I guess, in this thing, where just beautiful landscapes. I was not prepared for the variety of shots that they were going to be giving us. There is a shot of, I think it may be by the water, but it's a bunch of rocks that have been just kind of, it's just the greenery of it. Moss covered rocks and things are just absolutely beautiful. It's when they had taken the idea of, you know, filming some of the landscapes here, you could tell that it was just so well thought out. It's so vibrant and really kind of gets you into that element of the world building that they're doing here, because the visuals are so beautiful. So I think that was an element. While this film is long, visually it offers so much to you that I think, you know, you can find yourself almost enamored by that scenery because they give you such a variety of it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think from a filmmaking standpoint, this is incredibly impressive. I think that they do a lot with very little, and they do really immerse you into the world of, you know, 18th century Austria in a very, I guess, captivating way. It's the best way to say it, because like you're never not sitting there thinking, wow, this is a very beautifully composed shot. And you're never sitting there thinking like, wow, this is a wasted shot, or this is something that's you know, not at least engaging me visually. And I think that takes a certain level of skill and discipline, and it certainly shines through in this film, that they were able to keep that as a constant. And yeah, I think overall this is a very ballsy film that goes to a lot of directions. I know I made the joke about Immaculate and the coffee table with the subject matter they're tackling, and it's not feeling so fresh anymore, I can say that. But Luke made a comment about how effective it was, and I gotta say, yes, I agree. I think this might have been the most effective part to tackle it, certainly. And yeah, I found myself really invested in this film. I really thought that all of the actors brought their A game. There isn't anybody who's necessarily a big name, but our lead actress, I unfortunately am not even going to attempt to pronounce her name. She is Austrian, but Agnes absolutely delivers, and there's a very powerful scene in the third act that is, you could just see everything from the physical performance to the everything she's bringing. It's anguishing. It's tough. So for me, I'm going to sit here and say I give The Devil's Bath a recommend, but I also have to say that, again, this is not for the faint of heart. So understand what you're walking into.
Yeah, you know, and for me, walking away from this film, I didn't really have too many critiques at all. I can't really think of anything that I felt was a bad strike on this film at all. I can see this being a little bit longer for some people. Again, dealing with the idea of mental illness can kind of be an uncomfortable issue, I think, especially when you're in it for about 2 hours. You know, it can be something that maybe people are not prepared for. So I can see people maybe not liking this film from that aspect of it. But, you know, they make some bold decisions in this for the storytelling aspect of it. And then By the end of it, I think, when you're understanding the messaging that they give you toward the end of the film, I think it really does hit home. And again, beautiful scenery, great performances. Agnes, to get to that emotional level that she does throughout the film is hard work. And, I think you do feel that pain through the lens from her performance. So, for me, easy recommend. This is something where, I can't revisit this regularly, but I think when I do sit down and watch it, it'll be as thought-provoking as it is through your first watch. So this is something that, like Dylan said, is going to be appearing on Shudder. I do hope everyone does sit down, take the time to check this one out. While it's 2 hours, I think, it'll be worth it from that messaging perspective and certainly from the visual. So easy recommend for me.
100%. And yes, this is going to be on Shudder this Friday, the 28th. So definitely make some time if this sounds like it's something you'd be interested in. Again, very different kind of horror film. I still definitely consider it a horror film. It's just more personal than I think some of the stuff that we've seen recently. So I'm definitely excited to see what people think of this when they discover it. Hopefully it does get kind of like that buzz, that pop that like the coffee table got. It'd be really nice to see this kind of follow in its footsteps. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up here. We got a lot of great stuff up on the channel, lots of fun videos. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast,